hope you enjoyed part 1 of the G.D. Brown story. In this second part we will add Malcolm's part of the story and bring it up to the present day. So Simon, we've been talking with Malcolm about the history of the bike and G.D. Brown and racing it and about the sidecar. And both bikes have ended up in the museum, static and doing things that people do in the museum, not being used. And so you come on the scene in the recent past, and I don't know, how long have you been involved with
the racer? Malcolm and I spoke about it about a year and a half before the centenary, and it was whilst Malcolm was recovering from a bike accident, and we decided that it would be fitting to reinstate the machine ready for the centenary, have it running.
So how do you fit into the Brown clan, if I can call it that?
Well, my father was a Douglas enthusiast and knew GD very well, buying his parts and club membership and so on. My father also knew Malcolm very well through gliding, of all things.
Okay.
And my friendship with Malcolm really started when we got involved with the racer. Yeah.
Okay. And so you've been riding motorbikes for?
Rather too many years, yes, about 50 years.
Okay.
Yes.
So you're just a young lad learning?
That's right, yes.
Okay. And what sort of bikes were you riding, or have been riding?
Started with trials. I was never brave enough to do motocross. After that, road machines, and I currently ride several different road machines, and I do track days on them as well.
Right, interesting. Looking at the bike, it had been in the museum for 20 years gathering dust.
Indeed.
And never been run, etc. A lot of people looked at it, but everybody would like to see it running, and you had the...
I particularly would like to have seen it running.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
So what did that entail then?
Well, a machine that was run on Castrol R, vegetable base oil, needed to be stripped in order to be cleaned out. The oil solidifies and is very, very poor to keeping corrosion away. I had a word with Castrol, and they said there's no option, it's take it to bits and fish it out, and that's exactly what we did. My instruction from Malcolm was that the bike was to remain as original as was humanly possible, and that's what we did. And in fact, there are, I think on the engine there are only a couple of new little short oil pipes, and that's about it. When we're using it on track or here today, I do change things like the fuel pipes and sparking plugs, but the originals go back on before it goes back in the museum.
So it's only the consumables that are new, basically.
That's right, yes.
You were telling me a very interesting thing about the rocker covers and the rocker oilers.
Yes, well, as you can see, exposed valve gear, and in order to lubricate the valve gear, we have these little cast aluminium pots, and they contain 3 lengths of wool, knitting wool. And the idea is you fill them with oil, the wool absorbs it, and gradually the oil trickles down these pivots here, and also to a drilling there to lubricate the end of the push rods. Now, when I came to take these apart, they were just a solid lump. And after weeks of soaking, I managed to tease them apart, and in there is the original knitting wool. So not even that has been changed.
All original.
All original.
I gather also that the brakes are there in looks but not in effectiveness.
The brakes are quite possibly the worst I've ever experienced, yes.
I think as a feature of most Brooklands bikes, I think it's the old adage that the bike's intended to go, the brakes are only there to stop it.
I think the sponsors would say they pay you to go, they don't pay you to stop.
Absolutely. So any other little quirks that...
Every single part of this engine tells its own story. The cylinders are different lengths where they've been hand finished. They've been filed by hand in order to give the valves clearance. The front piston we looked at it with a view to improving oil scavenging and found that someone had drilled a hole in it and snapped the drill off, and then turned the piston round a little and drilled another hole and left the snap drill in there, and it's still in there. The one piston has been holed and been welded. So yes, there's every single piece tells a story, and that is why it's so important for me and for Malcolm to keep this as original as we possibly can.
I think certainly from my experience being at Brooklands, when you get involved in something like this, you realise that these were real pioneering days.
Absolutely.
And the people who were responsible, if you like, or behind it, were actually the designer, the maker, the rider, the mechanic, the machinist, the whatever. And every one of them is different. Every
Absolutely.
one of them's got different quirks, you know, etc. And I find this with the museum bikes, that you think you understand the X and you find that you get another one and it's completely different.
Well, they only made 3 of these engines.
Yeah, yeah, well, that's excellent, yeah.
And
okay.
each one has its own character.
Well, as another little adjunct to today, we've got what used to be one of my father's customers. I'm talking about the bike, not this gentleman here, who's Mr. Brockman, Barry Brockman, who is the, I'll get this wrong, the vice president or something like that of Witley Motorcycle
Club.
That's correct. Did I get it right?
Vice president. Yes.
I got it right, he's the vice president. And I've known him actually probably as long as I knew your father and yourself, because I've been a member of Witley Motor Club for 40 odd years, so I'm...
Longer than I have.
Oh, well. And the thing, I was talking to Barry at the Boxing Days Enduro, and we're talking about you, and he said, well, I've got a Douglas that was actually bought from your dad's shop originally, so this is an original sale. Now when you look at it, it doesn't seem as though it was a great buy, because it's sort of got a bit missing.
I broke it.
He broke it. He's not coming back for any guarantee or any, you know, anything like that. But tell us the, anyways, let me just talk about you a little bit, because you, as I said, you've been involved in running Witley Motor Club for a long time. You might do a little bit of promotion for Witley as an organisation.
Well, of course, it's a club that is 100 years old next year. So one of the oldest clubs in the ACU, in fact, one of the oldest clubs wherever. Brilliant club, sporting club. We're roadside as well, full of the usual motorcycle suspects. Just with a fabulous history, of which Graham was a great part of. He was our president for many, many years. And so I wanted another British motorcycle that had to be a Douglas because of the association. It took me a couple of years to find one, and then I found one that it looked like Graham had sold new and then bought back in 1978 and had until his passing, and was sold just after his death. So,
but of course, as a very careful owner,
you use it, and Graham would expect it to be used.
Definitely.
And unfortunately, it broke a conrod. But fortunately, it didn't smash the engine to pieces. So the engine is now a man with much more capable than myself. We've managed to find the parts, and she'll be back on the road in a couple of months.
Okay. Well, do you have any recollections of JD Brown that you would like to share with us?
Just a complete gentleman. I was fortunate enough in the Witley Club. One of the honours is to receive a silver badge, which is presented to a club member that's put in X amount of work. And I was fortunate enough to have mine presented by GD at the dinner and dance over at Frimley one year. He was just a complete gent. And when you got to know him and he relaxed a bit and told you a couple of his stories, he was a special man.
Yeah, yeah.
He'd done things that most of us only dream of.
Yes. Well, I can share that, because, as I say, I've been started many times at the Boxing Day Scramble and Enduro with this very, very pleasant, quiet, unassuming gentleman with his Union Jack, and he flagged you off, you know, and I knew him a long time, and I came here, and of course, is this the same man? And
Right.
Sure enough, it was. And then the other anecdotal thing, I was talking to somebody a few years back, the vintage, used to have a vintage event at Silverstone, and your dad had been there, and he was there with the Douglas, with his brown shoes on and his trousers stuck in his socks. And this guy said he was the quickest man round the track by a factor of about 50%. And they said it was just amazing that this mild-mannered gentleman was, I'll say, a lunatic, and I don't mean that in any derogatory way, but he was on it, and he was there, and it was just such a, and as you say, I mean, there are people in life that you come across, and it's just a pleasure to have been part of their lives, and they've been part of yours, and that. So thanks very much for coming today.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
And making, you know, another side to this.
Thank you.
Before we can move on to the live part of the filming, we have to prepare the bikes in the same manner as any machine is prepared for the racetrack. Here we see Simon working on the bike under the Malcolm's close supervision, and in usual Brooklands Motorcycle Team tradition, they are being further supervised by the team's members. The sidecar and its race bike was kindly put on display at Brooklands 20 years ago, and in true Brown tradition it was brought by Malcolm, who rode the sidecar and the race bike from Godalming to the museum. So we thought it would be fitting to recreate the last part of the journey today. We have Malcolm riding down through the Campbellgate entrance just as he did 20 years ago.
Decided to stop and pack up altogether.
established motorcycles. But today the bike is ridden by Simon Coombes, who is Brockman. And believe me, Simon is going very carefully today. He's running his bike at Brands Hatch, Mallory Park, and when Simon gets us on a proper track, he does not hang about. This is built with a factory racing engine and is still a very, very quick motorcycle. 600cc, 2 cylinders, 184, 185. Left the way down nice and low, makes the bike good for handling and cornering. But of course, on a tight demonstration motorcycle, you have to remember that this is a 1926 motorcycle, so it's got 1926 brakes. So Simon can't make the most of the speed, because anything that goes quickly is going to stop.
Right, here we go.
Having entertained today's visitors to the museum, we need to move up to the banking where the bike and rider were designed to perform. Sadly, for health and safety reasons, we are not allowed to ride on the banking, hence the security fencing. You can see from Simon's valiant efforts of riding the part of banking that is possible to ride on what an incredible sound and sight these bikes must have made back in the day.
How'd it go?
His comments are rather interesting.
Oh,
How was it?
scary. There's not enough room really.
No. You looked as if you were enjoying yourself.
Oh, it's wonderful fun, yes. Yes, quite an experience. Yes.
In a final quirk to the story, G.D. Brown was very possessive about his race bike, and it was acknowledged that very few people had ever ridden it other than himself. Unfortunately, Malcolm was one of those many people who would have loved to have ridden it and didn't get the chance. As you can see from him looking at the bike, it clearly was one of the things he would like to do. So today we will give him the opportunity to finally ride his father's bike at Brooklands on this rather damp February day in 2023.
Now then, Malcolm, your dad wouldn't let you ride this, would he?
No.
And
It was
I
1914, oddly enough, I don't know.
but it's been one of your ambitions, I think, hasn't it?
Mind out for hot exhaust.
Yeah.
Right. But this is one of your ambitions in life, one of your bucket list
That's it.
activities, and you can see the anticipation in his face. So we're going to make this happen for you, okay?
And it's all downhill, so I'm all right.
Yeah, absolutely.
After father retired, Simon very kindly took on the maintenance of the bike and looks after it, and he's done that now for nearly 20 years,
Yeah.
and that's why it runs so well. We've had one or two things we've had to do with it,
We
but
have had
nothing,
some issues.
everything's basically original. I think it's one of the most original bikes in the museum, isn't it?
Yes, I think you're right.
Does it
So-
stay here?
It lives
Yes,
here.
it lives here.
And you're a volunteer who looks after her?
I'm not a volunteer at the moment because of pressures of work, but I would like to be. But certainly the other volunteers keep an eye on it, and it lives in the Campbell shed.
Yeah.
It lives in the outfit, in the old delivery bike.
Has she been running all the time, or has she been made good for today?
Made good for the centenary. It used to run originally on a vegetable base oil which solidifies, and it took a long time to strip and clean all of that out before putting it on a mineral oil, so that we can do this sort of thing where we can take it out and run it for a short while and put it back.
You've
without
done a
it.
few track days on him.
We've done a few track days, yes. Always raises a smile.
Yeah.
Good. Valve lifter and be ready on throttle and clutch.
I'd just like to thank all of you, Barry, Malcolm, Daniel and Simon, for coming today and helping us to make this short film to preserve some of the heritage of your father and the machines for the future, so that they are here, and all the anecdotal stuff that you've shared with us today has been excellent, and from the museum's point of view, thank you so much.